All right, thank you guys for making the time today. I appreciate you guys filling the room. And my name is Denver Mackler. I'm the relationship manager from Microsoft to Zerto. And so a big key piece of what we've done is build a relationship over the last 2 years. So thank you guys for coming and attending. Want to introduce the two folks that are going to be speaking most of the time here. So I'll let Nava and Juan Pablo introduce themselves.
So hi, I'm Nava. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft. I'm based in Israel, and I've been working with Zerto for the last year and a half with their R&D site back in Israel, help building this amazing piece of software you just heard about.
Hello, my name is Juan Pablo. I am technical evangelist, same team than Nava, but based here in Boston. So we work together in all related to Azure integration with Zerto.
Okay, so we can start. So we wanted, you want to say something?
I'll just be eye candy over here.
Okay. He'll dance at the end. So we wanted to spend some time talking about Azure basics, like an Azure overview. So I think we can start. All right. Okay. So digital transformation, like the main theme we see now is a big movement toward the clouds, all types of clouds. So even like traditional businesses today are going through the process of moving to the cloud. We call this process the digital transformation, where you take your data, you take your machines, and you move from an on-premise kind of deployment infrastructure, the way you handle your machine, the investment of your time, and you move all we start to see a movement towards the cloud, and then you kind of free up your IT time, your development time, to think about other things than just maintaining your infrastructure. So it's a kind of optimization, transformation, this is the direction we see the world going in. I think in the keynote today, we talked about the Azure spread around the world. We have 2 new data centers just announced 2 weeks ago at Build in South Africa. So we have 40 data centers all around the world, more than all the other cloud providers combined. We have public data centers. We also have dedicated data centers in China region, in Germany,
Government data centers.
Yeah, government
as well.
data center, the Department of Defense.
DoD.
Yeah, DoD ones. And it's kind of tied to the next slide here. I wanted to spend some kind of minutes talking about the trust and compliance. So our spread around the world is really tied to the compliance regulations we provide. So using our public clouds help you with your compliance and regulations, like HIPAA, ISO, and so on. You wanna?
FISMA, FedRAMP.
Yeah.
Just so we have a grasp of audience members, are you guys mostly partner? How many are partners in here?
Yeah.
And then maybe customers? Okay. So just another click down is there's also 50,000 Microsoft field sellers that are comped on partner-driven solutions through Zerto and our partner channels. So it's kind of an interesting thing to bring up as well, in addition to, obviously, the roadmap and kind of where our global strategy is at.
Yeah, so the combination of all the regulation and the compliance we provide, along with our global footprint around the world, kind of answers all of the compliance issues you may have. If it's a data sovereign kind of thing, or if it's just a specific industry compliance, we answer, I think, most of the compliance and regulation around the world, and we keep updating. And just a few vanity, I think, numbers about our current momentum. So we have nearly 200 billion requests made to our services. We are over 90% of the Fortune 500 companies using our clouds. The numbers keep updating, so it could be that it's even more right now. OK, this is one of our favorite slides. So the cloud is, our cloud is huge. Not only the spread around the world, but also the services it provides. Starting from the data center infrastructure up to platform services. So we're starting with the basic. The core is the data center infrastructure, which we provide you. On top of that, we provide infrastructure services, just the basic compute, storage, and networking. And on top of that, we provide you with services. So the more up you go, the less work you need to do in actually maintaining the infrastructure and invest time in developing your application and providing good service to your customers. It's just a matter of where you want to be. Do you want to still work with infrastructure, or do you want to go up the, I would call it, food chain? Go up and just use our services. So today we're going to talk about the basic compute, storage, and networking right here in the middle. OK. So in compute, I'm going to talk about virtual machine and how they work in Azure, how they look in Azure. So we support Linux and Windows. We support several flavors of Linux. Red Hat, we have a relationship with Red Hat. We have certified images in our marketplace from Oracle, Red Hat, CentOS, Ubuntu, in addition to our Windows VMs. You can also bring your own operating system if you have your own in-house, inbred kind of operating system. There are some vendors who do that. And everything is open and flexible. How is it flexible? What do you do when you're building a VM in Azure? So now we're going to go into a bit more specific on what it means to have a VM, a virtual machine, running on Azure. So this box is your virtual network, or VNet, as we call it. It's an isolated environment dedicated to you. So any other infrastructure deployed in Azure cannot access this virtual network unless you want them to access it. So your world is inside this box that's called a virtual network, or VNet, as we call it. OK, so each VNet has subnets. So a lot of the terminology is terminology that you may know from the on-prem world. Some of it we change. I think VNet is VLANs, or subnets is VLANs. So a subnet is a subset of the virtual network IP range. So you can define as many subnets as you want inside the range of the virtual network. In addition to the world of this virtual network, you have storage. So storage is a separate resource managed separately. And your VM basically resides inside the storage. So a virtual machine is just a VHD disk that hosts your operating system. This operating system is hosted in the storage account. You can attach a public IP to it. You can decide not to have a public IP, and then it will not be accessible to the outside world. You can add a network interface, and there are, it really depends on the size of the VM, on the type of the VM. We'll talk about it a bit later. You can have even more than one network interface. And then basically you have your compute use the storage, and this is a VM. Once you have all those components, again, you don't need to have a public IP. You have a running VM. So the heart, the core of the VM is in the storage, the virtual machine. So your operating system lives, as I said, in an OS, in a VHD disk inside the storage, and each data disk you add to the VM can sit in the same storage or another storage account. Each one of those items I mentioned here is a different resource that's been managed separately and built separately, except for the subnet, which is a property of the virtual network. Sorry. So a bit later in our presentation, we'll show you all of those components in our portal. Okay. So except for like the basic virtual machine, we have some more. So we have a scale set. So let's say you want to have, we can obviously deploy and run thousands of virtual machines, each one separate, but you will have to manage them, deploy them, scale them up and down by yourself. So we also have a concept that's called scale set. A scale set is a set of identical virtual machines that can be managed and scaled automatically with this service that is called scale set. So it's a separate service. All of the machine in the scale set will run on the same image, will have the same operating system. Another concept that we currently support is containers, which is like the next big thing, the buzzword. So we have containers, and we just announced support of containers on top of Windows Server 2016, 2 weeks ago. And the next and the last thing we mentioned is VM extensions. So you can take your like normal VM, add extension to it, which is a different component, and it customize the VM. So like any operations you want to do during startup of the VM. All is configurable through our portal, through APIs, through JSON templates, which we'll show a bit later. All of the Azure APIs are REST APIs that are open and public. And we have a big set of SDKs that sit on top of it, plus a way to execute them using just JSON templates that specify what you want to build. You can just deploy it, and you have your entire infrastructure running. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about here is the concept of availability set, or availability, high availability in general in Azure. So let's say you have a rack of physical machines. You have power unit in the rack. And you have like a couple of them. Okay. So in order to have your VMs as highly available as possible, you need to make sure to put your VMs in the same availability set. Okay? If you put your VM in the same availability set, we will make sure that they will not sit in the same physical rack. So in case of a catastrophe, one of the racks goes down, you will still have the same, you will still have at least one VM, and you can, and you can still be highly available. The other thing that you will get when you put your VMs in availability set, you will make sure that they will not get updated at the same time, because we update the OS regularly, and not all, and will not update you on that. So if you put them in an availability set, we will make sure that they will not be physically in the same rack, and they will not be updated at the same time. So availability set is another important concept, and it's another resource or item that you can define separately in the portal or with one of our tools. I do just want to mention that you first create the availability set, and then you add the VMs to it. And another thing that I talked about how a VM is built and the disks that are basically just VHDs that sit inside the storage. We just announced last February, I think it was GA, a new service that is called Managed Disks. Basically, we, I would call it like manage the disks for you and expose a service. And in that way, you have your compute, the VM, is connected to a service that is a managed disk. In the back end, you have multiple VHDs that sit in on a storage account, but you do not have access to it. And it is exposed through, again, REST APIs. You see it as a service in the portal. So when you create a VM, and we'll show it right away, when you create a VM, you can decide, do you want to create the VM and use managed disk service to manage your disks? Or do you want to create a VM and just store your disk in a storage account, and then you can access that disk or manage it by yourself? Of course, we recommend using this managed service. Yes. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we'll talk about it a bit later, and we'll also do a demo of the portal. So I keep talking, but we'll show you exactly how it is, because it's a kind of technical session. And again, now when you when you go into the Azure portal to the marketplace and you create the VM, you will not have an option to use managed disks. Maybe in the near future. Yeah, yeah. Of course, we support both. It's a new service. The regular storage account is still a very good option. So, Azure VM Sizes. So we just announced, let's see, we just announced 2 weeks ago of new VM sizes. So we have a bunch of VM sizes, different families. Each family has its own characteristics and recommended usage. The larger you go, the more you pay. You don't always need it. There are some machine sizes that allow more network interfaces attached to it. There are the ND and the DV3 are machine sizes are very, very big machines that are GPU. They're used for SAP HANA. So you just need to go and think about what kind of usage do you need? What do you need your VM to do? And according to that, you decide on the type of the VM. So just to say, D and DV2 are basically the same. It's just a new generation. A is our lowest price, but this is our very old. I don't know if old, one of the original VM families. So the prices are a bit lower, but we recommend to use them for testing, not for production.
And if anybody's not sure, we have an online calculator that can kind of give you the specs between each of those.
Yeah, not only calculator, but also sizes and limits. So it really depends on what you need, because each VM has its different memory, different CPU, even different network bandwidth that it supports. And as I said, different network interfaces, number of network interfaces, because I've seen there's a lot of partner customers that need that. So you just need to know your requirements before you select your VM. But it's not like you cannot change it. You can always scale your VM up or down.
And if anybody has a better naming convention rather than the periodic table of elements, we're totally open for that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's compute. So Juan Pablo is going to talk a bit about storage and networking, and then we'll do demos.
Okay, now start for the overview about the services. If you remember the blue slide with a bunch of services. So we are trying to enter in details about VMs, compute, and two other important services for the customers that are using Certo, virtual networking and storage. So the first thing that you need to understand in this public environment is you will sit in our data center where we are hosting your things and others' customer things. Okay? So, but that doesn't mean that we don't have isolation between the different kind of customer or different customers. Okay? So from the networking point of view, you need to understand that we have these huge data centers, super well connected, each with others, with the idea to have the options to do deployment, not only in single data center, you could do deployment, for example, for failover or any kind of other high-availability architecture. You could do deployment in different regions and communicate these regions. Okay? So if you see here the slide about networking, at the left, left, so you have this started with the servers. We have like, apologize, let me start from the right. Here we are outside of the Azure data centers, and you have different ways to enter in the meanings from data, entering from the network. So we have different kind of connection, the optical networks, MPLS, or other kind of connection that enter to data center, and we have a first layer that is a software-defined one. Our one is logical, it's not physical. This is the way that we could provide different environment, isolate this environment in a dynamic way. Okay? And after that, we have another layer where we apply the security. We have performance monitoring, load balancing. We can create the virtual network that Nava already talked about that, and the subnet of this one. And we can do the cross-prime connectivity. That means the way you can connect, for example, your Azure deployment with your data centers using a VPN. Okay? So that's all the things are covered in our network design. So if we continue talking about a deployment based on IaaS in VMs, here we have a good example that shows different pieces of our architecture. The first one you will see at the top, you see the public internet networking that is connected in two subnets, the front end and the back end. The idea to do this one is obviously isolate the data from the front end that is public to internet. So you have load balance here, and you have here the front end, and you have connection directly between this subnet. We have something like we call
NSG.
Network security groups, that is this icon representation, that is where you can define rules, like firewall rules, traffic rules. You can custom security policies or custom security routing policies you can define here. All is by definition, okay? So for example, you can say the only machine that can connect to these virtual SQL servers that are here is the traffic that comes from these specific VMs from private IPs, okay? The others, so you have all this control of this one. You can define all the subnet that you want, and you can define all the rules that you want, okay? After that, you have like the options to connect with others Microsoft services. For example, storage. Your deployment could access, you could have VMs that, for example, are reading PDF document that is sit on our storage. So you have internal connection from your deployment to the storage. Second thing, for example, SQL DB is our SQL servers as a service that we are offering. Obviously, you can connect it to. And the last one icon that is here is when you want to do a connection between Azure and your data center. So you want to do that. You have two options to do that. The first one is create a VPN, site-to-site VPN, using the public network. So here is our virtual gateway for the connection from the VPN. And you can have here in your data center, you can have another connector and make a VPN over the internet. First option. Second option, if that's enough, we have a service. The name is
Express route?
Thank you. The Express route, that is a MPLS connection between your data center and our data center, and we have different providers that offer that. So if you want to have a direct link, we have the option. If you want to use a VPN, we have the option. I mean, if you want to pass traffic just over internet without any encryption, we have the option too. So this is the main things that I would like to comment about the virtual network at this moment. I will do some demos and I will show the configuration and these things later. Now let me talk a little bit about the storage. The storage is the most popular service in Azure today, and that's have a very clear reason, because different services that we built, for example, Service Bus, that is a pass service to pass message and integrate applications, use storage. EAS uses storage. Our VMs also using the storage. So web apps, different services is built on storage. For this reason, this one is the most popular service today. So in storage, we do a logical definition, the separation that is infrastructure as a services and platform as a services. So for example, we are putting focus here. But we have other services. Today, in previous Azure presentation, we talk about microservices or serviceless compute like Azure Function. They could use the storage too. So when we are talking about EAS, so VMs running in our platform, you have two kind of abstractions of storage that you can use. The first one is disks. And disk is the same thing that Nava was talking about. BHD sit on our storage. We have a standard storage, premium storage. The difference between standard and premium is one is based on SSD, and the other one is in the normal disk. And we have, now we have another abstraction that is managed disk, that is different and is not supported as today with Certo, but it's working on that. The second thing is files. Files is like a SMB server. So for example, for configuration sharing in different machines, you don't need to put in a machine and share this one to others' machines. You can just put on the Azure storage and expose this one like using SMB and map, for example, this configuration, and all the machine has access to the same configuration. Okay? So this is the two typical abstractions that we use with Azure from EAS. This is the typical use, but that don't mean that you cannot use the others one from the VMs. But these ones are more oriented to applications more than VMs. Why? Because, for example, the application use queues to pass message from one application to another one. So we have queues, we have tables. This is not SQL storage, it's a queue value storage, very fast, very cheap. I really like these services. If when you create new application and you need to store data, and this data is not SQL data, relational database, you could use, for example, storage. And we have, obviously, the ObjectX storage with the blob storage when you can put the binary. Continue with the example of the PDF. You could put the PDF here, and any services in Azure could have access to read this information. So the storage is a key pieces where you can put data and different services can use it. So come back to keep the focus on the virtual machine things. You have your virtual machines. Your virtual machine always will have virtual disk, the first one, the operation system disk, and you can add several other data disks. All this information, all this disk will be sit on the storage. One important thing about the storage, I think I will explain here, is this storage is high availability services. This is good things. You don't need to take any actions to, for example, have replicas. Any piece of data that you put in the storage has at least 3 replicas. This is the most simple. This is the cheaper version of the storage. You, for example, put your BHD there, and you will have 3 replicas in the same data center. The second option that you have is global replication. This is local replication. This is global replication. And that means that you will have your 3 copies of the data here, and we asynchronous will replicate to other data center. So for example, anytime that you put a PDF, let's continue with the example, a PDF. You put a PDF in the storage, your application put a PDF in the storage. This PDF has 3 replicas in the same data center. So if the disk fail, if the complete rack of the storage fail, you have other copies, and so you really don't see any interruption of the services. If that is enough because you are compliant, say, oh, you need to have the data replicate in other region, this one is your option. And you obviously, because here is asynchronous, you will have some latency. And now, this second option, GRS, is only replicating, but you don't have access to this data. It's only for the purpose to have the options to replicate the data to the second data center. So if the data center, this region, for any reason, disappear, you will not lose your data. And we have the last option. These options are options when you create your storage. So you are a storage account, you create a storage, the service, and you can say which kind of this storage would you like. And the third one is the same thing that we talked before, but you have the options to read the data from the second data center. So think in an application that has is replicate. You, for example, are receiving incoming request that you are putting in the storage replicate to here, and you could, for example, send the users that only wants to read information to the other deployment. So in this way, you are spread the load of your system. Okay. This is from the point of view of storage durability, how we are facing the problem, any problem that we could have in the storage, thinking about the physical storage problems. Okay, with replication, 3 locals, 3 remote, 3 local, 3 remote with read access. Now, we have today, and this is very important, in Azure platform, always when you go a presentation, is the current state of the art. But what will happen, we always are working on other things. For example, if this presentation it was on Friday last week, we will have 38 regions, and today we have 40. So this is an evolution service all the time. So today we have 4 tiers. The first one, and these 4 tiers, you can, for example, start with the standard BHD, where standard storage, where you put the VMs, the BHD disk, the disk of your VMs, in the standard storage where you don't have SSD disk. Second one is premium storage. This one is when you create a VM, they ask to you which kind of storage do you want. So for example, you could have dev and test in standard storage and production in premium storage, so that you can manage this kind of configurations. After that, we have another 2 distinct definitions, that is standard hot and standard cold. What is that? It's the difference between the data that is active and the data that is passive or cold. Why we have this difference? Because some customers need to keep information from 10 years because regulations said 10 years. But you really don't use this information, so you don't need to access this information fast. You only need to access, for example, the last 6 months. So here we are creating tiers of storage with different read access, speed access, but we are changing the prices. So put the data for a long time here is much more cheaper than put the data here. So if you see, always when people are talking about public cloud, is elastic cost, and the idea is optimize what you want to achieve with the infrastructure that we are providing to you. So in the same way that we have several VMs family, and if you need like super CPU processor and you can add a GPU to your VM, or no, I don't need nothing of that, so you can go to a cheaper VM. It's the same thing with the storage. When you deploy, when you design your deployment, you need to keep in mind this kind of concept. Okay. So now I will show to you some things working. The first things that I will show is about let me
Okay, just
change.
exit the
Yeah.
slide.
Duplicate.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's already
Which
open
one?
here. Yeah.
Chrome?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
This one, who saw before the portal, Azure portal? Okay.
Okay.
Good. Here you have, this is Azure portal. The first important concept that I would like to remark to you is resource group. Resource group is a logical definition where you can put your resources. Why exists a resource group? For two reasons. First one is for life cycle of the resources. For example, now I'm going to do a demo, and I will create here a resource group. The name will be demo 1. And he is asking in which subscription and in which region. So here you can see the different regions. So do something exotic like South India and create. Okay? So why the life cycle of the resource? Because I will create VMs and things, Nava will do too. And when the presentation ends, I can go and delete the complete resource group. Very easy. First reason. Second reason for the resource group, management. When you have a resource group, you can go, for example, to the resource group demo 1 and go to access control, and I can say I can define here in the access control, and I could add, for example, myself or other persons to add. This is Nava subscription, so.
It's low.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I will select the role, so owner, obviously,
And delete
JP
it
Garcia, JP Garcia at Microsoft.com. So searching, there are. So now I am owner of this resource group, and because I am owner of this resource group, all the things that I create myself will be owner too, but it's running in Nava subscription. So the access resource roles-based access control is powerful. Think if you are a provider and you have a customer subscription, that your customer could give you the right access to a specific resource to you.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that. You can do it on the resource group, but you can also do that on a specific resource.
Yeah, the roles-based access control is resource-based, but resource group is a good good place to do it if you want to put or give access to all the things that you're creating at the same time. So now I will create a very easy, quickly a Windows server. Let me see here, for example, this SQL Server edition. I will create a VM, and they will give me ask me things like in a wizard. All the things that I am writing here, you can put in a script. In a template. So this is an important concept. Resource manager, our resource manager, the Azure Resource Manager, understand templates. So you can describe the full infrastructure based on JSONs. So we will show that. So demo VM1 JP. This is the name for the VM. Look, do you remember the VM type? Here is asking if I want to use SSD or normal HDD. So I will use SSD because it's not my subscription. So now this is the OS administrator. So here is a password. Let me see if we remember the password.
Of course, if you create like Linux, you'll have a bit different.
Yeah, it's a
password and an SSL. Yeah.
It's the same, yeah. Now subscription, resource group, and okay, so let's go to the second dialogues. It's here, validating my data. Second dialogues, looks this one. Here you have some wizard to select the VM family. So let me show all the families. View all. So here you have all the families, and you have the price, monthly price estimation from each family. So you have the characteristic, for example, 16 cores, 112 gigabytes of memory, 32 disks. So based on the specification, you can choose one, and you can change it later. But this is obviously because our promise, like a cloud provider, is elasticity. So let me take just this one, whatever, is in promo.
And about the price, of course, the price is if the VM is up the entire month. You can obviously stop and start it.
Here you have the definition of virtual network. For example, here we are creating a new virtual network, and then here, this is the virtual network. Here is I can reuse another virtual network. You don't need to create one virtual network per VM. Here you have the subnet. If you want to have a new, public IP, here you have your network security group. Do you remember where you define the routing rules and the access rules? And the extension. The extensions, as Nava mentioned before, is pre-built extension that you can add to your VMs, like agent. For example, if you want to use for the Datadog, that is my one partner, this is for monitoring. So you can add Datadog, and it's really and it will be added to your subscription. So
We're a few minutes over.
yeah.
We're over?
Yeah. Oops.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We started a bit late.
Yeah.
So.
Hiability. The hiability set that is now explained. When you want to have hiability, you need to have at least 2 instances, and if you want to have monitoring and other things. So I will just leave the default things. Mm-hmm. Here, the step number 4 is about the SQL server. Remember, I choose a SQL server, so he's asking about SQL server things. I will leave all in default. And here you have the confirmation. So in the confirmation, you have the resume about what you're creating, and that's it. I click on created, and I already launch the deployment process. Mm-hmm. Okay? So
we are a bit tight on time, so I just wanted to show you the Zerto virtual machine. So you can easily deploy Zerto from Azure Marketplace. So if you go to the portal and just click New, and look for Zerto virtual replication for Azure. Okay, you see you have some explanation about the VM. In this case, it's a bring your own license. So you just deploy the VM. The VM will already have a link to set up Zerto replication, and you can bring your already existing license into it. So I'll just show you the wizard, but it's basically the same as what Juan Pablo just showed, but without the SQL Server configuration part. I just want to show you. I already did it before. So our portal is quite comfortable in a way that you can kind of pin specific resources to the dashboard. And here you see this is yeah. So I created a resource group called the Zerto demo. So inside it there's the Zerto VM and all the resources that surround it, the virtual networks it resides in, the disks, the network interfaces, public IP, because I added a public IP, and a network security group that allows data to go in and out. And here we have the virtual machine for Zerto. It's on the configuration. It's a Windows virtual machine. I'm already logged into it. And basically, it just allows you to begin the ZCA configuration where you use your already existing license. So I think we're out of time, but if you have any more questions.
I know we're in between you guys and drinks, so totally get it. It's a long day. So thank you guys very much for taking the time. And if you have questions, safe afterwards, feel free to ask. Thank you.